So, you know what is really concerning to me? How people react to modern post-apocalypse shows.
In what way?
In general, how post-apocalypse shows are portrayed. In previous video, we talked about sci-fi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how usually the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, is portrayed in the creation itself.
Mm-hmm.
How, when Star Trek was created, it was optimistic, Star Wars is a bit darker, and nowadays, we have dystopian sci-fi. I think it's similar with post-apocalypse shows. Where nowadays, whenever people think of the post-apocalypse, intuitively, inherently, the idea that should come to your mind is, okay, I gotta overcome this, I gotta restart civilization somehow. It isn't the case anymore. Nowadays, when people think about the post-apocalypse, they think about, okay, how can I start raiding, how can I start exploiting others, how can I survive by any means necessary, how can I survive as I'm the only person alive.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you're the only person left alive, you're gonna die. That's it for you.
Yeah.
The reality is that whenever a cataclysmic event happens, humans throughout the course of history have always gathered together to overcome it. An example I'm going to give, Attila the Hun.
Mm-hmm.
When he was ravaging Europe, his nickname was the Scourge of God, because he left nothing in his wake. He'd burn, pillage, and destroy every village, every town he'd come across. And what happened? People started rebuilding after him. They got together. They weren't thinking okay, how can I survive as a lone wolf? No, how can I recreate my community out of this? And that's what's the most disturbing about modern post-apocalypse shows. Because whenever people prep for a doomsday event nowadays, they don't prepare things like, okay, how can I find maps? How can I find communication equipment? How can I form a tight-knit community net with diverse skills and knowledge to be able to survive in the post-apocalypse? Because in the post-apocalypse, you're going to need tailors, you're going to need doctors, you're going to need botanists, you're going to need people who can build things, engineers.
Yeah.
No, people don't take that into consideration. What they do take into consideration, okay, how can I hoard as much resources? How can I afford as much firearms? And how can I exploit anybody that's left alive? That's horrible. That's inhumane.
I agree. I do agree. But the thing is, I don't think post-apocalypse shows as the genre itself was ever positive. With the first
Yes. I know. It wasn't their intention. The intention is to be fun.
Yeah.
But the way it changes people's perceptions is what's concerning.
It does. We had The Walking Dead 10 years ago. We have The Last of Us now, which are the most talked about, at least I think, post-apocalyptic shows. Alright, you have a zombie apocalypse, you have a fungi apocalypse, whatever. And what's the point of... Well, let's go with The Walking Dead, because it's more communal compared to The Last of Us. You have a group of people who, like you said, are just people you meet, and they're trying to form a society, and then someone else comes, destroys it, they go to another place, they form a city, they get destroyed, blah blah blah. And what I consider the prime character of every apocalypse shows in regards of what people aspire to be, Negan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you haven't seen,
but know who Negan is.
But you know who Negan is, right? It's a guy who makes a society out of people that he exploits. Everyone thinks, for those of you who haven't seen it, and this is not spoilers because the show is so fucking old, he's a guy who makes his community worship him. And that's what most people want today. When the apocalypse comes, they're like, okay, I'm gonna take you because you're my friend. I'm gonna take my family because they're my family. And then everyone else who comes, I'm gonna exploit them. That's not how you restart the society. The problem is that in most post-apocalyptic shows and video games, you as a protagonist, even though you have pure intentions, you're still destroying the chance of rebuilding society. For example, Fallout, which is one of my favorite post-apocalyptic games. What happened in Fallout? The world goes boom from nuclear explosions, and then you have communities who are trying to rebuild themselves, right, to restart society, but you also have a shit ton of raiders.
Yeah. Who are shunned. Yeah.
And that's how it should be. But the shows that you mentioned are making us want to be the raiders. They're making us they make us want to destroy the chance of progress. And it is saddening, but I understand why they do it.
Yeah.
It sells much more.
Yeah.
It's more fun. It's more
entertaining.
fun. Like, why would you have a show where everyone's like, oh, hi, buddy. So today, let's build a library over there so the kids,
Yeah.
can continue.
That's
Over
the
there.
hospital over there.
Yup.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not gonna sell.
Yeah.
That's not gonna sell.
It's much better. Okay, there, perfect. Slave pit over there. Torture chamber. Yeah, I'm thinking torture chamber. Come on.
And
It's
then
perfect.
we're gonna have one slave who's gonna rebel, and then he's gonna turn into the same shithead. Like, that's every single show.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters, not for the actions he did, was Shane. Like, I have a tattoo of his saying.
Yeah.
He died because Rick was so, full, like, he was full of positivity. He believed that he could change the world, he can restart civilization. And the later seasons, he becomes a worse person than Shane was. And they do it because that sells. That sells,
Yeah.
You can't have a show where everything's positive. At least today you can't. Like, there were a huge nuclear scares during the Cold War. Every single country had a plan on how to restart the civilization if it comes to that.
Every building had a follow bunker.
Yeah.
It was just,
And now we're like, okay, so you know what? If the apocalypse starts tomorrow, I'm gonna survive. No, you're not. You're an everyday Joe, dude. And even if you do, they're like, okay, so if I survive, I'm gonna be the nation's leader. That's not how you should look at life. Because the problem is, today, even though it's a good thing, we are more individualistic,
Yeah.
right? But at the cost of our humanity.
yeah.
And that's a problem, especially a huge philosophical and moral problem. Because if huge egos are the only thing left on Earth, nature is gonna recover.
Yeah.
Humanity isn't.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like,
Another thing I wanted to bring up, I don't know if I talked to you about the sex raft experiment.
I don't think so.
I know who it was, but basically, I think this was in the 70s, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. An American sociology professor basically read of an experiment that was conducted in monkeys, where a group of monkeys, when subjected to a lot of stressful situations, basically resorted to the most primal instincts, where they basically, all they did was fight and fuck.
I mean,
That was all they did. So he got the idea, if I can subject humans to the same circumstances, will we do the same? So he he planned a trip in a raft from North America to Europe, and he gathered a crew of attractive young people, of course, single, so the chances that they're
Yeah.
mating are higher. And an interesting thing he did that's actually applauded at the time, because this was an era where women's rights were at the forefront of the discussion, the most crucial jobs were actually relegated to the women, which was interesting. It was laudable. But the way he went about it was so horrible, because everything functioned as it should be. And it functions as it should be for a long time. So the guy who was conducting the experiment, got frustrated, where he actively started to sabotage the crew. What happened? They started hating him. Instead of being frustrated and, resorting to fighting and fucking, they started hating the guy who was basically exploiting them. it got so bad that at one point, like, they tried to kill him. Like, that's how much it got bad. They wanted to kill him instead of themselves. So when the experiment finally ended, the news had heard about it. They started calling it the sex draft experiment. His university didn't like the publicity, so they fired him. So it had the funniest conclusion ever. They finished the trip. At the end of the trip, nobody fought. I mean, experimentees.
Yep.
Nobody had sex. But they all reported that they formed a strong bond and a community between each other.
Yeah.
Some even remained lifelong friends. And what did the person who made the experiment get? He got fired. He got laughed at. His credibility went down the drain.
Yeah.
And why is it this interesting? Because the guy expected that we resort to our most base instincts. You know, our only concern is to fight and to reproduce. No. Whenever we were thrown into a stressful situation, we bonded together. We formed a strong community to overcome it. That's the human instinct. And that's why it's so concerning, because nowadays, we have the belief, as I said, that, okay, I'm going to become a raider after the apocalypse ends. No. That isn't your human instinct. That isn't in your blood.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to go against your own nature?
I mean, I'm gonna mention a song that is more talking about an anarchist revolution, but I think it works perfectly in a post-apocalyptic scene. It's by one of Pet the Bunny's bands, I'm not sure which one, and it was something about Jesus, I don't remember the name of the song, but he says, I do my dishes now. I'll do my dishes after the revolution. Saying such a mundane thing that we hate doing, well, most of us hate, because let's be honest, most of people don't have dishwashers. You're still gonna do them after the revolution. So you're still gonna do them after the apocalypse hits.
No.
Which means people often forget that once something so tremendous, something so devastating hits, you're still gonna have to do the most basic things to survive. The problem is those shows are like, well, you know what, you don't have to do your dishes. You can just enslave those people that you don't like and they're gonna do it for you, which is fucked up.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, that's about it.
Well, let us know, would you be a raider or would you try to rebuild society with us if we survive?
Yeah.
And as always, we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.